Did you know that in the 2016 election, more than 90 million Americans didn't have their votes count towards the final decision of who became president? Why? Because of the Electoral College. It's a system that gives some states more power than others, states with fewer people. In fact, a vote in Wyoming is worth 3 times as much as a vote in California. Shocking, right? But here's the kicker: this system was designed over 200 years ago, and it's still in place today. But why? What's the real reason the Electoral College continues to shape our elections? It's not just about protecting small states, and it's certainly not as democratic as many believe. In this video, we'll uncover the truth behind the Electoral College. We'll look at the original plan set by the Founding Fathers, how it's turned into a political power game, and why it might not be the fair system we think it is. Stay tuned as we explore whether it's time to keep, change, or completely abolish this system that decides who becomes the leader of the free world. Chapter 1: The Founding Fathers' Secret Plan, a legacy set in stone. When the U.S. Constitution was written, the Electoral College wasn't an afterthought, it was a calculated decision. The Founding Fathers, including figures like James Madison and Alexander Hamilton, were wary of direct democracy. They feared that an unrefined, popular vote could lead to mob rule or chaos. The system they created was meant to safeguard the republic and ensure that educated elites, not just anyone, had the final say. But what exactly was the strategy behind this? The Electoral College was designed to balance the interests of large states and small states. It was an agreement between competing visions of governance. The large states wanted more influence, while the smaller states feared being ignored. This compromise gave small states a boost, ensuring their voices weren't drowned out. For instance, small states like Delaware and Rhode Island would have little say in elections if the vote was based purely on population. By granting them more electoral votes than they would have based on population alone, the Electoral College helped keep their interests in the conversation. This system wasn't just a random choice, it was deliberate. In Federalist No. 68, Hamilton argued that the Electoral College would protect against tumult and disorder. His words reflected deep concerns about direct democracy, which he believed could be manipulated by populist leaders. According to historian Jack Rakov, the Founding Fathers designed the system to refine and enlarge the public views. This means the Electoral College was supposed to act as a buffer between the people and the president. But there's another layer to this design. The Electoral College system also gave states greater power. It wasn't just about safeguarding democracy, it was about preserving states' rights. The federal government was supposed to be a union of sovereign states, not a centralized power. The system allowed states to have a crucial role in the election process, making them feel more involved in the republic. However, this strategy didn't go off without criticism. Some founders believed the Electoral College gave too much power to the elites. Thomas Jefferson was particularly wary of giving too much power to the well-educated class. He wanted more direct involvement from the public. Even so, the system stood. As time passed, the Electoral College system endured. Despite criticism and challenges, it remained a pillar of U.S. elections. In many ways, it is still a legacy of the Founding Fathers' complex vision of a republic, a mix of democracy and aristocracy, balancing power between states and citizens. Chapter 2: Democracy or Oligarchy. The Electoral College's true power struggle. Fast forward to today, and the question is still alive: does the Electoral College support democracy, or does it create an oligarchy? The truth is, the system has grown into a major battleground for power between different political forces. It's a system where a handful of states can hold the keys to the White House. In 2000, Al Gore won the popular vote by over 500,000 votes but lost the presidency to George W. Bush. This shocking outcome raised doubts about whether the Electoral College truly reflects the will of the people. Yet, Bush's win was the result of securing key swing states like Florida, not the national vote. It highlighted a key issue. In the Electoral College, it's not about how many people vote, but where they vote. Today, the focus of presidential campaigns is largely on swing states, those few battlegrounds that could go either way. States like Florida, Pennsylvania, and Michigan have an outsized influence on the outcome of elections. Why? Because they're toss-ups, and a small shift in votes here can tip the balance. In 2016, Donald Trump's victory in Michigan by just 10,704 votes was enough to swing the entire election his way. This uneven influence distorts the idea of one person, one vote. Take California, for example, with a population of nearly 40 million people. It has 55 electoral votes, but because it's heavily Democratic, most of those votes are locked in. That means millions of Californians' votes don't really matter when it comes to the outcome. On the other hand, a few thousand votes in states like Wisconsin can be a game changer. The power shift to swing states often leaves other states ignored. For example, voters in states like Wyoming or Vermont rarely see presidential candidates visit or pay attention to their concerns. These states are so reliably red or blue that there's little incentive for candidates to court voters there. This shift in focus leads some to argue that the system is more oligarchic than democratic. The rich and powerful may win out, while everyday voters in solid states have less of an impact. This concentration of campaign resources is a direct result of the Electoral College's structure. A 2016 analysis from The Washington Post showed that 99% of presidential campaign events were held in just 12 states. This isn't just a coincidence, it's a strategy. Candidates go where the votes are most competitive, and that's where they're most likely to win the election. But there's another layer of the debate: should states have this kind of influence at all? Some argue that the Electoral College prevents more populist candidates from gaining power. Without it, candidates would need to build broad, nationwide coalitions that appeal to voters in every state. Instead, with the current system, the path to victory is more about winning the right states, states that are often more rural or white, and less diverse. This brings us back to the question: is the Electoral College a safeguard for democracy, or does it entrench power within a few elite states, ultimately limiting the political voice of millions of Americans? Chapter 3: Small States, Big Influence. Why your vote might not count in the same way. One of the most interesting aspects of the Electoral College is how it gives a disproportionate amount of power to small states. It's a system where a voter in Wyoming has far more influence than a voter in California. This unequal representation has led many to ask, is this fair? Wyoming, with a population of around 580,000 people, has 3 electoral votes. California, with a population of nearly 40 million, has 55 electoral votes. That means a vote in Wyoming is worth about 3 times as much as a vote in California. This oddity is not lost on critics, who argue that the Electoral College gives too much power to rural, less populated states. This imbalance is a direct result of the way the system is structured. Each state gets 2 electoral votes for its senators, regardless of population. This ensures that smaller states always have some baseline level of influence, even if they don't have as many people. On top of that, each state gets 1 electoral vote for every representative it has in the House, which means the more populated states still have more weight, but the small states are guaranteed a minimum level of power. In practical terms, this means that candidates are more likely to focus on the concerns of smaller states, where individual votes have a larger impact. This isn't just hypothetical, it's been shown in recent elections. In 2004, George W. Bush won the presidency by securing narrow victories in small states like New Hampshire and Nevada, while losing the popular vote overall. The idea of small states holding significant sway has deep roots in the founding of the country. At the time of the Constitutional Convention, small states feared being swallowed up by the more populous states. The Electoral College system was their way of ensuring that they wouldn't be overlooked. But does that still make sense today? Consider this: smaller states like Vermont, Montana, and Alaska can swing an election even though they have tiny populations. They're often seen as swing states, where the political leanings can shift dramatically from one election to the next. This unpredictability gives them outsized importance in a system that's supposed to reflect the will of the majority. While some may argue that this setup protects the rights of less populated states, it does raise questions about fairness. Why should a vote in a small state carry more weight than a vote in a large state? And does this system truly reflect the modern values of equal representation? Don't forget to subscribe. If you're interested in learning more about how the Electoral College impacts our elections, be sure to hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss an update. Chapter 4: The $1 Million Swing. How a few states can decide an election. In today's elections, the path to the White House is often decided by a few battleground states. These states are known as swing states because their political leanings can go either way. With a small number of votes, they can flip the election one way or another, making them critical to a candidate's strategy. In 2016, for example, Donald Trump won Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin by less than 1% in each state, securing his victory despite losing the popular vote. Campaigns pour millions of dollars into these states, flooding them with ads, rallies, and targeted messaging. According to a 2020 analysis by NPR, 75% of campaign ads in the final months of the election were aired in just 15 states. This means that candidates focus a disproportionate amount of their energy and resources on a small group of states, leaving other areas largely ignored. This strategy comes from the reality that winning these few swing states can make all the difference. Take Florida, for instance. With its 29 electoral votes, it has been a major battleground since the 2000 election, when George W. Bush narrowly defeated Al Gore. In the 2020 election, Joe Biden and Donald Trump spent weeks campaigning in Florida, making sure they could secure its valuable electoral votes. But why do swing states hold such power? The answer lies in the winner-takes-all system most states follow. In these states, the candidate who wins the most votes gets all of the state's electoral votes. This creates a competitive environment where every vote counts. It's the reason why a candidate may spend days in Pennsylvania but won't bother campaigning in California, which is already heavily leaning toward the Democratic side. This focus on swing states is a direct result of how the Electoral College was designed. Since a small shift in voter preference can dramatically alter the results in these states, the game is all about targeting the voters who live there. According to data from the Brennan Center for Justice, swing states have seen the most campaign visits, spending, and ads, while states that consistently vote one way or the other get far less attention. However, this strategy leads to a huge gap in representation. Voters in solid red or blue states may feel like their votes don't matter. After all, if a state is securely in one camp, candidates have no incentive to spend time or money there. This creates a system where millions of votes are effectively ignored. Is this system the best for democracy? Many argue that it undermines the idea that every vote should count equally. When the focus is on a handful of states, the concerns of voters in other parts of the country are sidelined. In this sense, the Electoral College can skew the focus of campaigns away from national issues and towards the priorities of a few key states. Make sure to hit subscribe and stay tuned for our next chapter where we dive deeper into whether the Electoral College should be abolished.